Watchers in the fourth dimension.
Logic seems to be your weak point.
His ingenuity could ruin everything.
I don't trust you. The feeling is mutual.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Don.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Reilly. And leave him to me. I'll kill him first.
This episode, it's the end of the Trouton era as we discuss the second half of the War Games. We covered all of the behind-the-scenes information in our previous episode, so if you haven't heard that, go check it out, then come back and listen to this one. Please do come back. With that being said, we will jump straight into our customary short summary and then discuss episodes 6 through 10. Don, the short summary is in your hands, so over to you.
My original summary was just 30 seconds of me weeping uncontrollably, but I'll see if I can actually sum up what we watched. The War Games continue as Dr. Jamie and Zoe continue to assist the Resistance, including a rather unfortunate Mexican stereotype. The War and Security Chiefs do their best to hide their true feelings from their familiar Bond villain-looking warlord, but frankly, they give us more sustained sexual tension than we've seen since the Dominators. After fighting for nearly 10 episodes to free people from having their memories tampered with and being forced to do things against their will, the Doctor calls upon his own people, the Time Lords, to give everybody a ride home. They reward him for his trouble by tampering with Jamie and Zoe's memories and forcing the Doctor to change his appearance against his will. Thanks for nothing, time jerks.
All right, so episode 6. And wow, the security chief is really suspicious of the war chief. Holy shit.
And rightly so.
He made a good point a while back when he said he was a traitor to his own people, so how do we know he's not going to be a traitor to us?
Yeah, that's true. We do get the first mention of the Time Lords here. They are finally named.
It's been how long now?
6 seasons?
Yeah.
It's not even like the name of an alien race. It's definitely from the Dominators school of naming.
But it sticks.
I swear next season we're going to have a group of bad guys called the Antagonists.
Change in leadership next season, so maybe not.
Okay.
But let's talk about the most important thing, is that Jamie isn't dead.
Yeah. Just stunned.
Just stunned.
I love how Zoe, seeing what's going on, seeing how ambushed Jamie is and the guards all around them. And by the way, I think we should start referring to the guards as the Gimp Troopers.
I agree. The Gimp Troopers is good.
But seeing Jamie surrounded by them, and yet she still wants to get up and help. Like, I like the energy, but Zoe, come on. Think about this.
I get it. You want to help your friend. What would Jamie's reaction be?
Exactly the same.
He would immediately stand up and
Charge and violently charge and attack.
Pregator!
Exactly, yeah, he would bellow that.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I'll forgive Zoe for it because I think she's thinking about what Jamie would do, and it would be to rescue.
That's very true. Okay, good point. So let's talk about that sexual tension Don mentioned.
The security chief really does have a sexy voice. That is true. I can't deny that.
he really does sound a lot like a Dalek.
He really does. It does seem like so intentional, doesn't it? Like it's just too on the nose.
It's definitely on purpose because it gives him the sound of, even when he's really upset about something, he sounds kind of like he's in control.
Mm-hmm. I think this is what happens when, as a organization, you have two people that you've hired and you put them in the exact same title or roughly the same title, war chief, security chief. There's probably a lot of tension there because they didn't know who was in charge of the other one.
He looks a lot like Goebbels if Goebbels wore glasses.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, Reilly, with what you were saying, I think one of the big things there is that they really should be thinking of themselves as being the leaders of different departments, but that's not how they think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But at least the security chief does have a pretty good reason, and his distrust is not unfounded.
In my headcanon, he's been hurt before.
That's how he has that cold, unemotional voice. He just can't open himself up again.
Yeah, that's why he's so suspicious of the war chief.
Wow, I'm not even sure what to say.
I didn't even think I was supposed to go down this rabbit hole, and apparently I was supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something there when the war chief says, "Be certain of any accusations you might make, or I will crush you."
It's almost got the same kind of sexual tension, competitiveness between the two deans on the show Community. The City College Dean and Greendale Community College Dean.
For some reason, I'm really drawn to thinking about John Oliver and his thirst over Kylo Ren.
Oh.
Crush me with your thighs, you robust elk.
Oh, this is 2 episodes in a row. I've completely taken us down a wrong path.
Thank you.
Adam Driver, not Kylo Ren. Anyway.
Moving on!
Moving on.
We're talking about the brain overlays, because they were awesome.
Yes, they were pretty damn cool.
They had a very unique art theme. Like, that's supposed to be a brain, and then they focus on Jamie's, and it's these little blocks. It amused me.
I just really want to come back to the war chief and the security chief. I've got them so much in my notes in this episode.
But they're very predominant. Their conflict, their emotional conflict is the B plot, roughly, until we bring in the Time Lords in the back episode.
I know last episode we talked about this kind of turning into a reverse base under siege, and I think what we see with the war chief and the security chief is another element of that, with the internal squabbling as things start coming under attack.
I think they were squabbling long before.
Yeah, but it becomes obvious on screen at this point.
I did like the argument they were having. The security chief had if they found anyone with odd brain pattern, chief comes in and why wasn't I informed and blah, blah, blah. Having worked in corporate America, you get that squabbling, competing departments feel to that.
Oh, God. 100%.
And again, I think one of the things is potentially the security chief was eyeing up the position of the war chief and didn't get it. And he's just continuously like, I hate this guy. He's not even one of us. And yet you put him in charge. How dare you?
I think you're right.
I think that long work days in that office when everyone else is left and it's just the two of them, they have long squabbling sessions in like the janitor's closet or the bathroom. Let's talk about one of the things that struck me is that, and I know it's not like very important to the plot, but Zoe looks absolutely adorable in a military coat and hat.
She really
They
does.
all do.
And she looks so cute as a button.
I mean, as much as I hate to direct things away from hate squabbling, you are completely correct. She looks so adorable.
They all look pretty adorable in those military uniforms. Like the doctor with his bowl haircut, just obviously not suiting the uniform at all, but is somehow really fetching in it.
I don't think Jamie's haircut really suited the hat either.
It doesn't. And then he's wearing a kilt, so the coat kind of goes down and it's like, are you wearing pants?
Yeah. I do love the entire escape attempt and how the doctor, Jamie, and Carstairs stay behind to try and get the processing machine, which shows Jamie and Carstairs' loyalty since he was going to go and do it alone. I dig it.
Mm-hmm. And then we cut away to the monocle guy. I forget his name.
On Lake.
Yeah.
That was a good scene. I'm sure you were like me going, no, don't do the pocket thing. Don't do it. Don't get the monocle.
Absolutely.
I love how that goes. You know, he does re-hypnotize his guard, but then the hypnotism's knocked out of him when Moore shows up and punches him just as he's being instructed to tell him to shoot the resistance leader.
And it had to happen that way because if we would have had another scene where they're completely successful with hypnotizing somebody and we have to spend like a lot of time to try to bring them back out of it, it just would have been way too repetitive.
Yeah, they've already set up the pattern and now they're starting to break those patterns.
Yes.
Also, the guard who got hypnotized, I believe, was David Trouton.
Yes, he was, in a very early role. Was it David Trouton who was in The New Statesman?
Quite possibly. I'm not sure.
It was one of the Trouton kids. I forget whether it was David or Michael. But yeah. Anyway, I digress again. Sorry.
Guys.
Lot to take in this one. Back to the escape attempt. That ending as the Doctor, Jamie, and Carstairs are in the side rat.
I hate that pronunciation.
It's how it's pronounced, apparently. I got it wrong last episode.
I think it's just how that one guy pronounces it.
We're going back to Sidrat.
I'm going back to Sidrat. Fight me, Big Finish. Come on. I don't care.
Sidrat sounds better.
I thought that was really cool how the War Chief reduced its dimensions.
It seemed to me like a callback to the last time that we saw the Meddling Monk.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's a good observation.
And as we mentioned earlier, we feel like this entire serial does end up making references to a lot of things during Trouton's period. And then we'll get to it in the last episode, but then it just kind of gives us our villain retrospective at the very end, too.
Not the best retrospective, but we'll touch on that, too. But speaking of covering major themes of the Trouton era, we also saw another return of the sonic screwdriver.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's neat how right here at the end they have a lot of internal continuity.
Yeah.
It's a lot of callbacks, a lot of internal continuity, and a lot of things where, as a person who's watched mainly New Who, it's like, oh, okay, ooh, we are finally introduced to the Time Lords. Oh, and there's this thing, and there's this thing. So it's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So episode 7?
Yes.
Sure.
They fell for the gas routine a second time.
Yeah, they're a bit incompetent.
I call it the Batman villain TV show, the getaway kind of thing, like where the Joker or the Riddler would do, just the
Yes.
drop the smoke. And granted, it was gas as well, but the smoke getaway, that's just a classic.
It's a classic Batman moment. I really wish I could exit every room in that manner.
Oh, God, it would be so wonderful.
I do love how the war chief is immediately like, well, they're clearly going to go back to the 1917 time zone, at which point you see the Doctor then cuts to him going, we're going anywhere other than that. That's good.
Almost like a little iocane powder conversation right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the war chief,
You mean the warlord?
excuse me, the warlord, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So we haven't got to the warlord yet. Okay.
Well, we're about to. So finally we find out he's about to show up.
All right.
Very quickly, did anyone notice how we find out he's going to show up? Of course, the war chief and the security chief start going at it again. And once the war chief walks off, the security chief channels the bad boss that we've had and yells at his people.
Yep.
Yep.
I was like, okay, so we've got that trope.
We have that trope. And then speaking of the warlord, his impeccable beard grooming is on point.
I aspire to that.
So good. But do you think that maybe the war chief and the security chief are squabbling because they want the warlord's attention?
Ooh.
Also possible.
Maybe.
The love triangle.
Very much.
And I must admit how much I love the casting of the Warlord.
Oh,
It's our good buddy Philip Madoc all over again.
Philip Madoc and his Welsh teeth.
Yes.
he plays it in such an interesting manner because you expect the warlord to be kind of over the top and really loud, and he's not. And he's very subtle, and I love that.
Yes, we have another calm guy in charge. He was so good.
He was very good.
We have two very over-the-top villains in the war chief and the security chief, so I love that they balanced them out by bringing in their boss, who is very, very reserved, and when he loses his temper, you know he's pissed.
That's why he's the boss.
Yeah.
And now, did anyone think that the warlord, his style, did Steve Jobs steal his style? The glasses?
I did wonder the same thing.
It's very similar.
Or you could just think that, like, we could just play a game and say this is, like, this alien race of the warlord, war chief, security chief. They're just Apple employees.
So would he be the iLord?
The iLord, yes.
The iLord Pro, I guess, would be the proper designation.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Let's talk briefly, since it's all interspersed. We get another Roman attack because they've landed in the Roman time zone, and it's the exact same footage.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's cheaper, Anthony.
I know.
They had to pay for that stuff. Come on. You gotta get some usage out of it.
With all 5 Romans.
They already spent that money. It's not like they're going to be able to get actual photographs of potential faces at the end of the serial. They have to draw those on the cheap, so they spent all that money on the Roman outfit.
This is one of the most ambitious episodes. I mean, I know that the Daleks Master Plan is as well, but this, I think, covers a lot more than the Daleks Master Plan ever did. And so I'm not surprised that, if they're going to cut a corner and re-show some Roman warfare, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, if it had been them being attacked by evil Christmas trees, I'm totally in favor of that, but Julie is correct.
Yeah.
We get General Smythe again.
We do.
I was not happy about that. I was ready to see the end of him, but he's back, and you're like, oh, no. But at least we get to see the end of him, though.
Yeah.
He's vicious here. He just wants the Doctor killed for revenge. He's prepared to lie about it to his superiors. Risky.
It is risky, but what I like, though, is about bringing him in is it makes it feel like the world is more complete, because it's like, yes, of course they're going to interact with these characters again if they're going to go back to that era. So I like the continuity of it, and yes, I know Smythe was kind of a little ridiculous, but I still liked him. as a character.
I thought he was great. I mean, I know we said last episode, in any other story, he would have been the main villain. And he's relegated to, I think, being in 3 or 4 episodes.
I think the only character as far as finalizing something that we didn't get to see was Lady Jennifer.
Yeah.
And I did miss seeing her in the last half of this.
Well, so let's talk about that. How many women did we see in the last half of this?
Zoe?
Outside of Zoe?
Outside of Zoe, 0.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Well, there was one more at the very end.
Well, yes, she came back.
Yes, Tanya.
The half of the flirting blondes from the Wheel of Space.
I love that they brought her back, but we'll get to that.
And I'd like to clarify, it's not that I dislike I don't like Smythe because he's a villain. I just really despise the character, but but that means that's a well done villain.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's nice that when he comes back, you essentially get to see him get his comeuppance.
Yes.
And frankly, I think if his superiors had found out what he did, he would have been killed anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's so bloodthirsty, and when the Doctor sees him, the Doctor is so very spiteful and petulant towards him. You can tell there's a real, antagonism between the two. It's just so well done.
He gets his comeuppance, and they're trying to figure out how they can create a home base for themselves, and he comes up with creating their own time mist. Which
I like. That's smart. That's using the tools at their disposal.
I still question it a little bit because I still feel like the people of... Okay, so no soldiers can get in and things of that nature, but does that really stop the warlord and the chief and all of them?
Well, they're basically have the potential to be attacked on 2 fronts. Anything outside the chateau, which is, real human soldiers, and then also by the warlord's troops coming in through the Sid rats. Yes, I'm pronouncing it that way. So they're trying to eliminate at least one of those avenues for attack.
And
Fair.
It's made fairly clear in dialogue by the warlord and the war chief, not so much the security chief, who's an idiot, that they would rather use conventional troops rather than ruin their experiment with their GIMP troopers. So eventually that's what they have to do because the Doctor knows that they're trying to avoid that. So he forces them into that option.
First off, I do want to talk about how their plan is stupid. So there's that.
I warned you last time. I bet the actual explanation is not going to hold up because it never does.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
I mean, it's ambitious, but stupid.
Ambitious, but stupid.
I know what's going on here. After he left, the now unnamed planet, the war chief, actually encountered and worked with some Cybermen. And he got a spare plan from a cyber controller. And you can figure out the rest from there.
Yes, we can. One thing that I was curious about was they capture a French soldier and deprogram him, and no one, not even the Doctor, can speak to him. Because apparently the Doctor, despite speaking so many languages and getting around just fine in France in the Reign of Terror, can't speak French.
There's a Futurama joke around that. I leave it to the audience to discover it for themselves. I also like that the French soldier couldn't speak English until he was specifically asked if he could speak English.
I mean, he barely speaks English, but he at least is like, oh, English.
And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's still recovering from getting rebooted, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I don't blame him for that. I think the Doctor knows and is just sticking around.
Wow.
Would that be an anti-Doctor thing, really? Like, he would do something like that.
Maybe. All right, so we end this episode with the shock attack with the GIMP troopers, bringing us into episode 8.
Well, I mean, you have to say what happens. The Doctor is captured by the GIMP troopers,
obviously.
And then the machine takes off.
And we should say that they're continuing to have good cliffhangers.
Yes, they are.
So far, I think the weakest one was way back in episode 2.
Yeah, I think you're right. We haven't even discussed episode 8 yet, but I think episode 8 has one of the best.
Yeah, we'll get there.
I love the way once he's been captured, the Doctor tells one of the GIMP troopers that he's not going to harm them. That's just so Doctor-ish.
Oh, that was great. That was awesome.
And of course, without the Doctor, everyone else is like floundering on what to do. I mean, he's very clearly the brains of the operation.
Well, it's partially that he's the brains, but then there's no clear who should be next in line of being in charge. And that's where the struggle is.
I know who Julie thinks should be in charge.
No, I don't think he should be in charge.
But he's put in charge.
As much as I love Jamie, Zoe should really realistically be in charge.
Yeah.
In a case like this, Smarts is going to overcome Braun. She should be in charge of coming up with all the plans, and Jamie should be in charge of actually leading physical battle.
But she needs to wear the coat and hat.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
She always needs to wear the coat and the hat. Also, that scene with the security chief questioning the doctor, he just won't let this drop. You're in league with the war chief.
Oh, but we got the interrogation hat again.
I'm going to buy you one of those for your birthday.
Ooh.
So you'll be wearing that to Dragon Con?
Yes. I might make my those little sunglass things that they wear.
You're just like, what in the world?
People just think, why is there a Devo cover band here? That's awesome.
It would be the most obscure cosplay group at the Doctor Who photo shoot.
Okay, now I have to.
So I get the cute hat and coat, right?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Fantastic. I love it. Who's wearing the gimp suit?
I think Reilly's the only one skinny enough.
That's true.
Oh.
So the plan is to get this Mexican Civil War group. And
Because this is going to play out so well on screen.
I can't.
So very quickly, can we talk about that adorable smile that Jamie has after he gets over the surprise of being put in charge?
It's like, finally.
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't bring that up, Julie, because that was precious.
It was very precious. And again, while I don't think he actually should be in charge, it's adorable that he's so excited.
All right, let's talk about Arturo VR.
Okay, first of all, I love the fact that he comes in stealth mode. And then after that, it's like, we almost have another comedy accent character here. I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, he tries to be Mexican, but he seems more Italian at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the actor definitely doesn't necessarily know the difference.
I don't know. There were a lot of really great Westerns made by Italians, so...
That is very true.
I mean, I know the character is played broadly and stereotypically, but I don't know why I enjoyed the character so much, because it was just such a wild card character, and to throw that in when everything's been so planned and reserved, and we just have a guy that's like, hey, I'm just going to come in here and just start shooting stuff. He's like Yosemite Sam.
I like him from that aspect. Basically, once you get past that stereotypical accent and like look and feel and everything, like the fact that he's just coming in being like, I don't really care, I do what I want, it's like, yeah, that's kind of fun. But what I liked is Jamie's first Zoe's trying to talk to him, and he's like, well, I'm not going to talk to you, so we have to do with Jamie. So first off, I love when like Zoe goes to like get Jamie, and he's been like just resting or something, and he's like, oh, okay, what do you need me to do?
He has very primitive ideas about women knowing their place.
But to see the difference so obvious between how Jamie treats women and how Arturo treats women is, yes, while sometimes Jamie runs a little bit of that chauvinistic streak, it is with a different intent. He doesn't think lesser of women. He just wants to protect them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A much better place to come from than Arturo.
And in this case, he was clearly just enjoying getting to tease Zoe a little bit.
Oh, 100%. Oh, does he now? Sounds like a nice chap. Dialogue triumph right there.
For Arturo, the other thing that's really interesting about him, he gets his own music cue in this episode.
Yes.
You notice that? And it's quite good. It's quite fun. I just thought that was so funny that we had been using the old War Games cue for so many things. And then all of a sudden we decide in the 8th episode, all right, let's have a completely different one for this one specific character.
I think you almost have to, because all of the other characters from the games have all been so buttoned up. They're very disciplined military men, either from World War I, the American Civil War. They're in serious conflicts, and suddenly you get this Mexican bandit. He's just such a different character from what we've actually seen so far. And I think having his own musical cue, because of that, makes a lot of sense.
It also, once again, keeps the story moving along, but not necessarily in a direction you were expecting.
Right.
Because we're continuing to introduce new characters in this serial. It's very impressive.
I mean, it goes back to what we were saying last episode around how this revolves the cast frequently. You get characters coming in and out. It revolves the setting fairly regularly. It definitely does help keep it fresh and interesting. You're right, Don.
But here, and I'm doing this as a segue so that Julie can express her feelings about it, as the war chief interrogates the doctor, we finally get, I believe, the discussion of what the final objective of the war games are. Their cunning plan.
To take over the galaxy.
And bring peace to the universe through conquest.
So they have all these people fighting, and the people that survive are clearly the best soldiers and will be a super army. What about, missing limbs, PTSD?
Well, my biggest question is they chose all of these wars from different time periods. How in the world do you think that Roman soldiers are going to do against World War II soldiers? It's a different type of warfare, and for the most part, well, if they have guns, the World War II guys are gonna win.
But that's the thing. They're not even fighting in different time zones. They're just fighting their normal war.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are they up against in the galaxy? Because if anyone in the galaxy is further advanced than Earth, then sucks for them because all their soldiers are gonna die.
I assume they're going to take them and train them on how to use their futuristic weaponry and so on. But yeah, it's not a great plan, as plans go.
I mean, it would have been better, and Anthony, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It really required some sort of scene to explain, it doesn't need much, just a little bit of detail of we wanted to see who could be the most bold, vicious, aggressive, and yet tactically smart fighting force, no matter what weapons they had, because we will arm them or something. To find out, you're looking for the best warriors from the inside. That's all they need to say.
What I find strange about that, though, is especially with some of these wars, as much as we talk about World Wars 1 and 2, with World War 1, you got 16-year-old fighting. They're not going to be your best bet, but they're going to be your primary force in that. So it's just, it's bad. I'm sorry, it's just bad.
I think fundamentally, what are the writers saying on this? And I think it's a very bleak outlook on humanity.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about how we've spent thousands of years killing each other savagely. Wow.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes out of that interrogation is we do get a little bit of conversation, and I know we come back to it in episode 10, but between why the two of them decided to leave their home planet, between the Doctor and the War Chief. The Doctor says, I had every right to leave. He wanted to obviously go explore the universe and interfere in stuff, and the War Chief just wanted power. But I like that we start getting that hint of that conversation earlier, and it comes back around and feeds into episode 10.
Yeah.
That's well done.
And you mentioned it before, Anthony, when we were talking about the first half of the serial, is the War Chief does kind of seem like a blueprint for the Master.
Mm-hmm.
Need to bring the Master back with that facial hair.
You son of a bitch, I'm in. Let's talk about the resistance plan as they're gonna head back in. I love what they're doing, drawing the aliens out through destroying equipment in different time zones and coordinated attacks.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And also how it was done, the montage of showing the clip of the small little attack and building up there. I wish that obviously they didn't have enough money to do several of those little one-off action scenes and then cut it back to them and the headquarters working on the map and it's building and you can see a process, and that would have been great. But the point still comes across.
What I love about it too is that each place had its own theme.
Yes.
And the best theme was the Crimean War. Crimean War definitely had the best musical theme of this entire serial. I loved it.
So with the Crimean, one of the Cossacks, his hat and his how he looked facially, made him look a little bit like Jimi Hendrix. Just saying. So what I love about this really feels like when this truly becomes reverse base under siege, because you have them picking off the alien troops in multiple different locations with the goal of dividing those resources so they can get into the main base and take it over.
Very guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, It's done so well, and it's that final use of that Trouton era trope, I think. And it's all because the security chief is an idiot. We send all the troops out. Oh, great. Now there's nobody to defend the base. All right, let's just nuke everyone. Dude. Dude.
Yeah, and I'm like, you had this carefully curated plan. You have all these war games going on, and your reaction is, let's send a nuke.
Just wiping the game board and starting again, I guess.
I'm sorry, I'm 100% Team War Chief in this.
He's much more competent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really is.
If the security chief spent less time trying to undermine the war chief and more time on doing his actual job, this might have gone better.
Although, to be fair, I guess I'm okay with the security chief being that way because, or else, the TARDIS crew would probably be dead by now.
That's true.
Plus, it was really fun seeing them squabble and fight.
Speaking of the war chief, he basically coerces the Doctor into helping them and...
Help work with us or I'm going to nuke your friends.
and I'll kill you, yeah. At least he gets the Warlord endorsing his plan, albeit with the threat of killing both the Doctor and the War Chief if they fail. But the Doctor helping them ambush everyone, that felt so dirty. I felt icky with it happening.
It's so strange because that is a perfect example of such good development of a character. And granted, it's been many, many years, but to see that happen, even though you know that the Doctor has another plan or he's just doing it because he has to, it just still hits you wrong.
Yeah.
It just gives you such an emotional reaction when you see it and you just, it's my favorite cliffhanger, even though I know it's very obvious that somehow the Doctor is going to figure out a way, but it's the first time I've seen something like that play out from the start of the series.
And what really makes it, for me, and really twists the knife, the emotional knife, is when the camera cuts to the faces of Jamie and Zoe when they realize they've been betrayed. Their expressions was so heartbreaking. All right, episode 9. We're heading towards the end.
I don't like it.
No.
All right, we'll soldier on.
Resistance people wanting to hurt the Doctor.
Yep.
Everyone else wanting to kill the Doctor.
So the security chief, let's talk about him for a second. So he and the war chief still can't agree on anything, and that includes whether or not to lock up the Doctor with everyone else. The war chief really needs him because his TARDISes or his Sidrats are about to go belly up. And then the security chief throws the Doctor in there with the Resistance who
want to kill him.
He's also just told that the Doctor's going to reprocess them.
Did the war chief just steal a whole bunch of Sidrats? Because he apparently doesn't know how they work. I mean, they apparently have a problem with the Doctor taking one old model, and this guy just basically went to a car lot and took the whole bunch of them.
So I don't know whether he built them. There's definitely a line in there about what he did to add in remote control and a few other of the features shortens their lifespan, and he knows it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's built this problem for himself. I guess he stole a lot because if he built them himself, he wouldn't have this issue on only having a couple left because he could just build more.
I think his problem is going to come to it. I mean, if the events didn't unfold as they did, he was going to have a problem very soon because they don't have enough juice to do what's necessary at the end of the serial. Yeah. And if the war games were going to continue, they were going to have to go and get more subjects.
Kind of makes you wonder what his plan was. Like, he knew this was going to fail, and he didn't know the Doctor was going to show up with his own TARDIS.
I guess maybe he thought he would just use one with some juice to maybe sneak back and steal some more? I don't know.
Maybe. Just doesn't seem that well thought out.
I also don't think that the war chief thought it would take so long for them to do what they were doing. That's one of my guesses.
A plan that bad takes a long time.
It really does. But I really liked kind of that interaction of Doctor like figuring it out, and it's like, what do you want? Oh, you want the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Which, once again, he probably could have figured out where it was, because they know where they were first reported. They know it was the 1917 zone. So all he really had to do was to send some people out to look for something odd.
Yeah.
People aren't smart.
You know, there are some holes in the plan here, but I don't think it's overly detrimental to the story.
Let me put some wallpaper over the plot hole that I just pointed out. He may know that these machines can be locked. And even at the end of this, we do see the Doctor using his key on it, so maybe he realized that it would be locked and would be impenetrable. So he needed the Doctor to be able to get in.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds like I think we're being a little bit critical. Probably Donna and I are probably sounding the most critical of everyone. It's really just to say that it is a really good story. I've been enjoying it thus far, but what is wrong with it? And the plot of the plan is what's wrong.
Yes. It did not impact my enjoyment of the serial one iota.
Mm-mm.
I mean, that's effective storytelling. If you can distract the audience away from your plot holes because you're so interested in what else is going on, then...
Yeah, because it's really about what's happening to the Doctor and his friends.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that where the Warlord basically, says the Doctor was doing a good job because of what happened. And he's like, but why have you switched sides? Rather than most bad guys who just assume that you'll join up with them because they're awesome and stuff.
I mean, the Warlord is actually awesome because he's smart and realizes that.
Mm-hmm.
I would switch sides because of the Warlord.
That turtleneck and beard.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. I need his grooming tips.
Uh-huh.
The security chief, right? So he catches the war chief on tape telling the Doctor that he plans to take over. This was a few years before Watergate, so prescient storytelling, but why is everything being recorded?
Because he told them to, I guess. He says that because I made sure that your conversations were recorded. I'm not sure when he had time to do that, but once again, that's...
Okay, I missed that line.
That one I didn't worry about as much. I know that it wasn't something that was thought of as much back in the 60s, but as someone who's, in current day, yeah, most everything is recorded. So I just kind of was like, okay, yeah, he's been recording. Finally, you're listening to them.
It kind of makes sense. I mean, we do have the security chief who looks like a Nazi. We have the Warlord who, aside from looking like Steve Jobs, also has a very Bond villain-esque thing to him. And,
Yep.
Even in the Bond movies, always got gadgets and recordings and microfilm and all that. So it really, it fits the ethos.
That's true. And I love that final showdown between the war chief and the security chief when the security chief confronts him. And the war chief starts off with, "What a stupid fool you are." And the security chief just launches into his spiel and then goes, what a stupid fool you are." I make him sound like Skeletor, I think.
He does sound like that.
Finally got him. It's taken him like 5 episodes, but he's finally got him.
To go back to where our resistance folks are.
The reprocessing.
Oh,
And the slow thinker in terms of our Mexican guy.
Mexican-Italian.
Yes.
I love it.
There is one plot hole with the fake reprogramming thing that I couldn't wrap my head around was, hadn't the war chief seen that Jamie had been with the Doctor since the very beginning? And doesn't have a place to really fit in because he isn't from any particular zone. So with Jamie being the first one to go through the reprocessing, and it just seems like, wouldn't he be suspicious? That's the person he chose first.
I thought that they did have someone because earlier we had the British soldier who thought he was fighting in the Battle of Culloden.
Yeah, they had a zone that Jamie could have been from. I mean, that was why they had the...
That's right. You're right.
But your point does kind of stand if the war chief had recognized, hey, it's that same guy that's been around you the whole time. But
Yeah.
maybe he just didn't pay any attention to Jamie.
Probably not.
He's got a lot going on.
He's wrapped up in the security chief. He doesn't appreciate the finer things in life, such as Jamie.
Got a lot of squabbling on his mind.
Speaking of which, he's very quickly brought in to the rebels, where he's locked up. So just like the Doctor being screwed over by the security chief, now it's the war chief being locked up with the people who hate him. He's quite vindictive. And I do love how he takes a lot of glee in eventually gunning down the security chief. There's so much personal revenge in this story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The end of a wonderful romance.
It was always going to end this way.
One of us killing the other, surrounded by men in gimp suits.
Okay, so we start getting set up for the final here, right? We know what's coming. 2 machines have enough life left, so they can't get everyone home. We're starting the setup.
Mm-hmm.
The war chief knows what's coming. He says to the Doctor, "You can't call them in."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we stop all the fighting, and I'm not ready, guys.
If we have to just linger on the end of this particular one, this is the first time I think we have legitimately seen the Doctor frightened.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And his whole thing is, I'm out. You guys stay here. You'll get home, but I'm gone. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, before we go into like the very, very end of episode 9, can we talk about the Doctor summoning the Time Lords? I didn't know it was so similar to summoning Cenobites. That was interesting. It was an interesting effect, but I know they had to do something with that instead of just having them like sit down and meditate.
Well, they bring back those little message cubes in the Matt Smith era.
Oh, yeah,
that's
that's
right.
true.
Think to the Doctor's wife.
Oh, that's a deep cut right
Yeah.
there. That's pretty awesome.
I really like that as an idea of being able to like put a message in a box and send it out. I really enjoyed that.
I do think it would have been smarter if he'd done the summoning, right next to the TARDIS.
Yeah.
But there are legitimate reasons why he couldn't behind the scenes.
I think what adds to the Doctor's terror of the Time Lords is the War Chief is equally terrified of them coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries to escape and is then intercepted by the Warlord, who is still incredibly calm and collected, but has the War Chief killed. Another one bites the dust.
But is he really dead?
Good question.
Yeah, well, that's another question that comes up in episode 10 that we'll get to. That hits on that as well. Can we talk about the very ending scene of episode 9? Because I thought that, I'm not usually a fan of slow motion, but I thought it worked perfect here because it was not just for dramatic effect. It was supposed to indicate like something physically happening to them.
Mhm.
And the use of the music
Oh,
with
my
the
gosh.
the organ is so cool. I loved it. It was grandiose and like showing that something like huge and big was coming, but also that it was ominous. It was wonderful.
So I agree with you in the use of organ music here. The continued use of the organ music, I have some issues with.
Not so good.
Yes.
I think here that organ music is also compounded with the whooshing of the wind that we get
Mhm.
of them coming. It's eerie and yet momentous at the same time. It works so well.
Yeah, you have a feeling of a force of nature is coming
Mhm.
down upon them.
And you could be forgiven watching this in isolation for thinking that maybe the entire 6 seasons so far have been building up to this as opposed to this being kind of thought up on the fly, because they make it that grandiose and that kind of epic at the end. I really like how it's done.
Once we hit the end of episode 10, it kind of is an end. If anything
Yeah.
was being set up to get beginning because, well, we'll get there.
Yes. One last thing before we start episode 10. I did love how Carstairs wanted to go back to 1917 before the Time Lords sent them all home to try and find Lady Jennifer. That was very sweet.
Yes.
It is sweet.
I did like that.
As I said, they end up married in the books.
Yay.
Episode 10.
So they get in the TARDIS and they go away and they land on a farm. If that was how you summarized
They go to a farm upstate to live the rest of their lives, and that's it. The
happily
end.
ever after.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, guys, let's rate it.
Okay, that was it. Okay, so yeah. So we have the chase. We have a chase, basically.
I mean, it's barely a chase.
Yeah, I mean, we just get shifted all around. We're on top of the ocean.
We get some recycled footage from...
We get an alligator outside for some reason. I mean, and then eventually, outside of all that, we're just brought there. We don't say what the name of the location is or the planet they're on, but it's just the home
Mm-hmm.
of the Time Lords.
So before we even get there, so they're trying to get away, and you get that disembodied Time Lord voice in the TARDIS telling the Doctor that there is no escape.
Yeah.
He has to come back.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
They are set up here as godlike.
Oh, I mean, everything they do, like the amount of powers that they show throughout this episode, it's just like a god.
Yeah.
You can't, I'm trying to think what their weaknesses would be.
There's stuff here that you see in this serial that, from what I've seen in New Who, hasn't really come up again. Just the fact that, there's like some sort of weird mental power they use later on, the way they arrive on this planet. And frankly, you get the impression that the Doctor is from this planet, but he's not necessarily a Time Lord. He really does seem like a more ordinary person, but who had the same lifespan and was bored and really did just steal it so he could make it different.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what you see, and Julie, I know you haven't seen anything further in Classic Who beyond this, but Reilly, I know you've seen bits and pieces. Don, I know you've seen bits and pieces. Is they kind of slowly erode and wander away from this godlike, what's the word I'm looking for? This godlike portrayal of the Time Lords. It's more like a kind of slow erosion that we'll see over the next 20 seasons.
It's hard to make them interesting when you make them OP, essentially.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem, is that if they can do whatever they want and there's no repercussions because they can just overpower mentally whatever they're dealing with, that's no fun of a story if you're going to come up against them again and again.
That's very
Right.
true. And I think this is one thing that I'm overwhelmed by the weight of canon and of history. I don't really like the Time Lords or delving into the Doctor's backstory.
No.
It fills up time, but it always just makes things more convoluted and worse.
You're talking in general, Zahn?
Yeah, I'm talking about in general over the course of the entire series,
Okay.
where new things are revealed. Oh, they all have regenerations. Oh, it's only this many. All this kind of stuff. No, don't do that. It's about a guy who stole a box and goes to planets and helps people.
Because then you get stuck into the, oh, hey, Gallifrey was destroyed. Oh, hey, it's back again. Oh, hey, it got destroyed again. Oh, hey, it's back again. Like, I'm tired of this yo-yo. I'm tired of this place. Can we just not?
It goes back to what I always feel like the show was about or should be about, is that one of the things that makes it so interesting is that, as we discussed, we have basically a godlike alien, and the focus of the show shouldn't be who is this godlike alien, what is going on with their backstory. It should be, what is this godlike alien who's been around forever think about ordinary human beings?
Yeah.
And dealing with them. And what does that say about us as human beings? Like, what are our good qualities? What are our bad qualities? What are our quirky qualities? Stuff like that. The Doctor is there to be, our protagonist. Sometimes I guess not an antagonist, but our protagonist, just to or to get the story moving. But he is a sounding board off of the companions or just whoever shows up in each episode week to week.
Yeah. More stuff they add, they inadvertently just take things away. Like if this was all we ever saw of them, and he gives that explanation of, hey, we had all this power, we can't do anything. I was bored, and he went to explore the universe and found out how much he enjoyed helping people, rather than, starting out by hitting them with rocks just to get his own way. That's an amazing bit of character growth that I didn't just want to see things like I did at first. I wanted to help people.
Yeah, exactly. And if they cut it off and we'd never seen the Time Lords again here, they would have been incredibly effective.
Yes.
Yes.
Just going back to their psychic power, when they're putting the Warlord on trial, and they force him to speak by using psychic powers, and we see him on the ground screaming in pain. Like, he's been so calm and collected and cool up to this point. That's really weird to see the Warlord like that.
Oh, yeah. Do they ever do that again?
No.
As I said, I was less shocked to see the Warlord's reaction. I was more amazed to see the Time Lords do this.
Yeah.
And also, like, as has already been mentioned, that is a ridiculous power for any character to have in fiction. Just to, I can just think about it and you're going to be crumpled up on the floor in such horrible, excruciating pain that you can't do anything other than scream.
I was also very surprised to discover that Gulliver was a Time Lord.
Yes.
I was going to make a comment of, it's nice to see that, if anything else, they've been consistent and Time Lords have always been dicks.
Yes.
Yeah. 2 of the 3 Time Lords will come back as Time Lords again in Doctor Who, which is something I love. Lovely bit of continuity. Bernard Horsfall, aka Gulliver, will be back in season 14's The Deadly Assassin, and Clyde Pollitt, the 3rd Time Lord, will be back in season 10's The Three Doctors, both playing Time Lords again. I love that little bit of continuity. I like to think they're the same Time Lords each time.
Yes.
More on the Warlord's trial. So even after he's been reduced to screaming, he is still incredibly defiant. He refuses to acknowledge the authority of the court. He tries to throw the Doctor under the bus. I mean, dude, he's at this point like, I'm not going to get out of this, so I'm just going to burn everything down with me, and to hell with it.
I was actually really surprised that they continued with his character, because they had, the guys, what we call them, the Gimp Warriors or whatever they are.
Gimp Troopers.
Gimp Troopers, yes. Showing up and basically assisting him in an attempt to escape. I didn't expect that to happen.
No, and you kind of wonder what was the point. Like, we've seen how godlike the Time Lords are. Again, did he think that was going to end well?
I think the whole thing is there's a lot of, just based on what we've seen of Doctor Who, you always expect there to be an escape.
And this is showing there is no escape.
When they let the Doctor go and see Jamie and Zoe, and then they're like, okay, run. And they basically get right at the TARDIS. Even though we kind of know how this is going, we're like, oh, maybe they'll get away. Maybe it'll work out. And it's just repeatedly seeing him being almost defeated. It's emotionally impactful.
Yes, I'm with that.
And I think, speaking of the escape attempt, this hits back on what Julie raised, and we might as well go ahead and talk about it now. So, the war chief, dead, ? On this escape attempt for the warlord, the mechanics working on the TARDIS, I guess the Time Lords maybe outsource their work on TARDIS to other races for people that don't regenerate, because they're just dead. The Gim Troopers kill them.
I think, isn't there some lore where not all people on that planet are Time Lords?
Hang on. So let's put this in the perspective of the time. Regeneration is not a fully evolved concept. We've had the Doctor renew his body once. We're about to have the Time Lords force him to change his appearance, but it's not really an established concept.
Especially because in the first time we saw it, the Doctor said it was a function of the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So it's still working within established canon.
We're still about 5 years away from the actual concept of regeneration being brought up as a regular thing that happens to all Time Lords.
Fair enough.
So I like it, and yes, there have been a ton of efforts in televised Doctor Who, in expanded media to try and explain it, and yes, Julie, you are right. There is the concept that there are Time Lords and then just straight up Gallifreyans who aren't Time Lords, two races, and I think Gallifreyans can become Time Lords by going to the Academy and staring into the Untempered Schism and what have you, but that's all come later.
I mean, based on the context of the story, it sounds like Time Lord is a job more than anything else.
That'd be a pretty cool business card to have.
Hey, maybe they were shot with the stun setting.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Don, I'm going to print you a bunch of business cards that just say Don, Time Lord.
You know, I was going to make fun and make a point of like, oh, so as Dom was saying, the Dominators decided to call themselves Dominators. So the Time Lords, like, oh, how egotistical to call themselves Time Lords. I don't know, fair enough. With all the powers they have, they could call them whatever the hell they want to call themselves.
Dominators, you've got Time Lords, you've got Ice Warriors.
They could even call themselves the Time Dominators.
Ooh.
But
All right, so...
Punishment for the Warlord and his people. Brutal.
yeah.
Force field around the whole home planet and then dematerialize him and his Gimp Troopers so they never even existed. Ouch.
Yeah, but they can do whatever they want.
And now onto the Doctor's trial.
Which is, I thought, was an interesting echo of the first couple of episodes of this serial, where he was on trial by General Smythe.
That's very true.
And essentially has the same outcome, in that he's condemned to what's essentially death.
Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, again, the 13 lives thing came much later. I mean, here the Doctor's already said we can live forever barring accidents, but put in the context of the later mythology, they've just taken a life away from him fundamentally.
Yeah, I mean, they're taking away his essentially a life, and even if you view it within later context, they're destroying his personality.
Yeah, it's an execution, 100%. He is very proud of his interference, though.
As well he should be.
As well. And then we get Jamie and Zoe trying one last time.
Again, that little bit of hope, that little bit of, hey, maybe they'll think of something.
That final actual escape attempt, do you think the Doctor only went along with it to try and give Jamie and Zoe a little bit of hope?
I think he had a little bit of hope himself. Just maybe.
Really?
At the very end, where he's finally saying, no, Jamie, no, you've got to go with him. That's when it's final. That's when he is accepted that there's just no way.
I don't know. I feel like it was, kind of agree with Anthony. I think it was done as a one more time, one little quick little adventure kind of thing. Just kind of give them like a little bit of like that feeling again.
I don't know if he did it necessarily for them, because when they were getting sent back, he was like, they won't remember, will they? I think he always knew that they would have their memories taken from them. So I think it was for himself.
I mean, he's got a lot of resignation through this. He knows what's going to happen. You know, you hear it in his voice. He's resigned to it. And when Jamie says we can keep trying, he's just like, no, Jamie.
The fact that their memories were wiped, I mean, they knew he existed, but he was there and then left. That was the part that got me. Because we've seen Jamie grow and become, more cultured, and we've seen Zoe, who left because she just didn't feel like she belonged there, and then basically being shoved back into a life that she didn't want.
And, when you think about it with Zoe, that culture brainwashed her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, her culture brainwashed her, and then Jamie's going back to the after effects of Culloden, where they take away his kilt, they take away the tartan, they take away Gaelic. He's not going back to a pretty place.
Yeah, that's especially if they catch him killing that British soldier that he's chasing down.
Yeah.
I mean, and they really hammer home what's happening to these two. You know, with Zoe, they bring back Tanya to say, yes, she's back on the wheel. With Jamie, they put him back right where we first saw him. I mean, it's not just they're gone and we don't see where they've gone and we can headcanon it that they got sent to the wrong place or what have you. No, they are back where they started.
And it's kind of disturbing because, in a way, and I know it's been mentioned that, as Don has mentioned, that their character development is taken away, but also it kind of, in a way, it's the show taking these characters that were companions and reducing them back to 1 week guest star characters.
Yeah.
And one episode, and that is it. And that's very interesting and quite sad.
The whole thing I found that I kind of mentioned this a few minutes ago, but at the end of this episode, you can really view this as being the end of Doctor Who as it first began.
Oh, 100%.
The through line of connecting the Doctor through his transition and through the companions, we've always had overlap. But at the end of this, the Doctor that we knew was gone, and the companions he had are gone. You can view this was really the end of that original run of Doctor Who.
And crucially, we don't see the new Doctor.
No.
And it goes into color.
Yeah,
it is truly a clean break. I mean, absolutely a clean break.
Yeah. And, you know, we'll come back to it next time. There's one element that ties it to what we've seen before. But for much as people joke about Doctor Who died with Peter Capaldi and Jodie Whittaker's not really the Doctor, there's on-screen continuity there. You see the 12th Doctor regenerate into the 13th Doctor. She's not an imposter. We don't see Patrick Trouton regenerate into John Pertwee. For all we know, the third Doctor is an imposter, and this was the last thing anyone ever saw of the Doctor.
Entirely possible. I mean, I know there's been, fan talks of the mythical season 6B.
I was going to bring that up. Thank you. You got there before me.
You can't really do that with this Doctor and with these companions. You could say that there were a bunch of regenerations happened between him and Pertwee that we just never saw, and the Time Lords wiped his memory. You could do that kind of BS. But really, yeah, the continuity, there's a clean break right here.
So some fans in the early 90s started a fan film called Devious that was set in between and actually had an additional incarnation. And they hired John Pertwee before he died to come in and do a regeneration scene.
Wow.
And show this in-between Doctor regenerating into John Pertwee, which is pretty cool. And then they end it with John Pertwee falling out of the TARDIS at the beginning of Spearhead from Space. So, yeah, that fan film is they're still trying to finish it. It's been like in development hell for 30 years at this point. But
wow.
Yeah. Clips of it are out there. We'll put them in the show notes.
So we don't end on a sad, somber note, and I know this is backtracking to the Doctor's trial, but in the Doctor's trial, as he's defending himself, and he talks about how he was fighting all this evil, the Quarks, that's who you're going to lead your argument off with, is like, I was fighting really hard against evil, like this thing. And I'm like, that's who you start off with?
The funny thing is, he mentions, it's the Quarks, and then the Yeti, all robotic servants of the actual evil that you think he would have mentioned, and then the Ice Warriors.
I've got it in my notes. The Quarks, what? The Yeti, The Ice Warriors, nope. The Cybermen, okay, getting there. And the Daleks. All right, that one's
there
good.
We go, yeah.
I think he chose those specifically because, some of the other antagonists that we had were very much earthbound and were only a threat to Earth. Some of these other ones, I think, could go to different places and things like that. So that's why those were the ones he chose.
I think he picked the ones that looked the most sci-fi.
No, or that.
Yeah.
To segue off of what Julie just said about Earth, that's our main thing that we're going to be left with here. I mean, we've already talked about the Doctor having to have his body and face changed, but the other part of the sentence is you are now exiled on Earth.
Oh yay, 20th century Earth. Oh boy.
Yeah, no, can't change time, gotta stay there.
Which they do say, we accept that there is evil that must be fought. And I think on a story that's been so down on humanity, we're now going to see the Doctor exiled to Earth to try and make things better and to try and make us better.
try to make the show cheaper.
That too.
Yes. It's almost Corey time.
I was trying to give some like good in-show philosophical commentary, and Don's like,
Sod that.
money cheap,
Uh.
sets cheap.
Don't worry, guys. Soon we'll have bubble wrap.
All right, so let's talk about Trouton's final moments. So we get those sketches on the screen, which are just done. You already alluded to them. They're just not done well.
It's not that they're not done well. It just seemed inappropriate. Like you would have thought they would have had, some pictures, maybe some people that were in the crew as a joke. And the same thing that got me was when they were showing, the effects of the war games and talking about the guy, and they were showing all these people died, but they were using like paintings and drawings, not always photos. I'm like, you're kind of not really selling your message there. So I think they have a problem with displaying things on there.
And then we see him being cast off, and it gets very gurney. We get a little Bohemian Rhapsody video in there. It's a weird end to such a somber story and such a heart-wrenching departure for Jamie and Zoe. And Trouton does not get the best send-off.
I don't know, because when he came in, it was all very psychedelic and weird. And as he leaves, it's also very psychedelic and weird.
I guess there's some symmetry. I hadn't thought about it like that. Yeah, I guess there's some symmetry there, Don.
I would totally have preferred if we got a regeneration scene and all that, and some... I don't remember what his actual last words were, but I think there was something about, "Oh, you're making me giddy," which is not the most distinguished final words. But like I said, I think there's some symmetry there, and I'm still far more sad about his leaving than I think I really should be for a show that aired in 1969.
Yep.
I get very upset from the new Who regenerations that I've seen and the changing of doctors that I've seen in Classic Who. Like I said, I've made it up to the 4th Doctor. I get very upset when the actors don't get... I mean, it's a cliche in drama where an actor gets to do a death scene, and I just think that it's kind of crucial, especially in a show like Doctor Who, where you have so much time you spend with that character, and there's so much that the writers can call from and the actor can call from, that you really, that is such an important part of being the Doctor, is to be able to give an amazing goodbye. And like you said, and granted, the whole concept is still new to the show with Trouton, right here. So there is no big send-off. It's just, it's not built up as much. So we have the Bohemian Rhapsody ending, like Anthony said.
First of all, It could be worse. He could have fallen off an exercise bike.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Remember that. And it's we're really seeing the Doctor in defeat. Mm-hmm. He had to call in people he didn't want to call in. He had to send his companions back, and they won't remember all the things they did. And he's losing his personality and his face, although he's quibbling about it the entire way, which is pretty cool.
And to your point, Don, he had to call them in knowing full well what would likely happen and what the outcome would be.
Yeah, and he did that to save all those people.
And this is really the first time we've seen the Doctor defeated. Mm-hmm. Let's do the ratings. Reilly, we will start with you this time.
I feared you'd say that. All right. I think this would have been a perfect 8-episode serial instead of 10. I know it's something we often say, but in this one, it's so clear. This reminds me of like a double LP that has a collection of like maybe 13 great songs out of like 30 that are on there. You don't need all the extra stuff. Just make it one regular length album, and it's just, is amazing from beginning to end, and you could have really hit it. And the way this serial could have trimmed things down, remove the repetitive plot elements, the constant reprogramming, deprogramming, hypnotizing with the glasses, and the back and forth and back and forth. That could have been trimmed up so much. It's that is just crucial. But I had seen this serial before. I didn't care for it before, but this time going through it with a full experience of the Second Doctor, I enjoyed it much more, and I appreciate so much more about it than I did before. So I will give this 8 magic boxes out of 10.
Wow. Next time you watch it, your third watch through, you might get it up to 9.5. All right, I'm next. I think this story's great. It's really got that epic feel. And, yes, it's 10 parts. Yes, it's long, but that in itself doesn't make it epic. This story has a sense of scale. We've got the various time zones. We've got a big cast. We've got the looming of the Time Lords. at the end, and an episode that builds up to it. We've got some fantastic villains in the shape of the war chief, the security chief, and the warlord, General Smythe. I just think there's so much to like here, and I think this is a very, very fitting end to the Trouton era. It says a lot about it. It's got some great sets. It's got some great costumes. I think this is just so well done. It's not quite at the level of The Mind Robber for me, which, if you recall, I gave our show's first 10 out of 10. But for me, this is a solid 9 Gimp Troopers out of 10. All right, Don, you're next.
Well, because I don't want to repeat too much stuff here, I think if you're going to have to do a 10-parter, this is the way to do it. Normally, when we watch these, I can get through maybe 2 episodes of a serial in a day without wanting to kind of stop and take back. With this one, I was able to watch 3 or 4 at a time, except I delayed watching the last episode because I really just wasn't emotionally ready. Because to me, I've grown really attached to the Second Doctor, and basically seeing him terrified at the end of episode 9 and just, facing what is essentially a defeat was really emotionally engaging for me, which was nice and not something I was expecting. I think this is an incredible story, and I think one that probably deserves more love than it gets, and I'm giving it 9 hate squabbles out of 10.
All right, and last but not least, Miss Julie.
All right, and again, not to reiterate a lot of those things, but I actually personally liked the back and forth because going back and forth changed each time it did that. So it wasn't just, oh, we're back to the same old thing. It's like, okay, well, we went back, but we went back with knowing this new information, and we're able to move forward with the plot, and it's not just a complete rehash. For the most part, the music is good throughout. There were a few questionable moments, but there were some really things that shined. The organ music, the Crimean War music was really good. The overall war theme is good if overused. And that last episode, I just had all the feelings. And it's the most feelings that I've had in any Doctor Who story up to this point. So I am also going to give it 9 Gaelic war cries out of 10.
Cregantor! And that gives us a story average of 8.75. It is our second highest rated story of the season, so that's awesome. So since we've wrapped up our story discussion, very, very quickly onto the mail. Friend of the podcast, J.M. Casey, commented on our Facebook page to talk about our episode on the Croutons, stating his theory that the Croutons were trying to train the Gon's brains in a very certain way to have them perform the necessary calculations to their ship, and all other education went to the wayside. We will definitely have to ponder that one. Anyway, with that, it's time for us to wrap up. We will be back next time when we will do our customary end-of-season retrospective. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and have a good one. Been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Don Smith, Reilly Schreck, Julie Philippak, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Hate Squabbling, was recorded on Wednesday the 28th of April 2021. If this is your first time listening in, all of our previous episodes are available on your favorite podcasting app. You can interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and leave us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All 3 of those things really do help the show. And always remember, if caught by the Time Lords, there's a chance that you'll never remember.